Good afternoon, everyone. This is David Stearns with Haley Marketing, and welcome to today's Lunch with Haley webinar. Today, it's my pleasure to be joined by Ryan Marr and Kathy Duffy, who joined me at this year's Staffing Industry Analyst Executive Forum Conference in Austin, Texas. So for everybody watching and listening in today, what we're going to do is recap the lessons we took home from the Exec Forum. I would love to tell you we can capture everything that was done in this 3-day event. And while we did capture a lot of stuff, we really didn't come close to getting everything. It's too big, too good of an event. If you're in the industry and you really want to hear what's going on at the leading edge of staffing, this is one to attend. But what we'll cover is the lessons that Kathy, Ryan, and I took home from this year's conference. And before we get into the agenda and lessons, I will extend a brief apology. Usually with our webinars, we're trying to demonstrate some of our design skills and show off pretty pictures. Well, this one is so filled with content that these are probably the most boring slides you've ever seen, but we did it intentionally so you'd have lots of good notes with our lessons learned. So that said, what are we going to talk about today? Well, we are going to start with going over the keynote sessions. There were some amazing presentations, starting with Barry Ason's State of the Industry and several of the really good speakers. We will give you a little more detailed highlights of what we learned from those presentations. We'll then go through the breakouts that the three of us were able to attend. Not 100% of the ones we were able to attend, but we kind of summarized the ones that we thought would be the most meaningful for today's presentation and that we could fit in an hour. And then we'll wrap things up by some of our personal take-home lessons. And if you have any Q&A, there should be a little time left for that at the end, depending on how long it takes us to get through covering the notes. All right, so let's jump in. The keynotes. Let's get started with those. So the theme of this year's conference was faster, better, stronger, all about leadership in a new world. That we're coming, hopefully, out of the COVID era into the post-COVID brave new world. And Barry started off by giving us a really nice overview of what's going on in the industry. Gross domestic product is up 3.5% for 2022. For forecast, we have 3.5% for this year and 2.6% for next year. We had much higher growth in 2021, simply because we were recovering from 2020. And SIA does see the pace of growth slowing over the next 2 years. The industry hit a big milestone. We are now over 3 million average daily workers being put out in the field by staffing companies. The industry, United States only, has crossed 150 billion in temporary staffing. And what's the forecast looking forward? Well, a few things to look at. We've got 2021, we had 14% growth in our industry. And again, that's coming out of the big year for pandemic. 2022 will be a more modest 4% growth forecast. So that will vary by sector. Some sectors like healthcare are booming at a much faster growth rate. Some, like administrative office clerical, are at a slower growth rate. Now, what's going to impact us this year? I was sort of surprised that the first thing Barry brought up is the negative perception of our industry as a whole being the first competitive threat. And what he means by that is that particularly in the public sector, sometimes in the media, the temporary staffing industry is not seen in a very positive light. And unfortunately, as an industry, we sometimes are tarnished with the weakest of the players in our industry, and that paints a negative perception of everybody. But if your business, if you're listening today, I'm sure you're not the ones that people complain about, because you're here to learn how to make your company better. But that means when you think about your branding and your market and the marketing that you're doing, the service delivery that you're doing, every single day, you're not just battling with yourself to be good, you're battling to overcome what others perceive about the industry, because if we don't do that locally, at the state level and nationally, it will create tougher headwinds for our industry in the years to come. And you see a lot of the employment law challenges coming out of states like California because of this negative perception. And that leads to legal and policy compliance. I will not dare to touch this one. I would recommend that if you want to get into that one, sign up for the upcoming ASA Staffing Law Conference. But we're seeing across the country, we're helping some of the state associations to drive attendance at conferences and grow their membership. And the number one issue for state associations from California to Texas, very liberal to very conservative states, they're both dealing with the same issues. How do we deal with the negative political and legislative climate in our states to protect our industry? And speaking of protecting yourself, cybersecurity, the threats of attacks, given what's going on right now in Ukraine, they're expecting more attacks from Russia against American companies. But even without those, we were facing unprecedented levels of phishing attacks as people are going after your in-office and particularly your remote employees where security may be more lax. So do you have the policies and procedures in your business to ensure your data is protected? That people can't go through one of your remote workers' machines into your ATS and be stealing, destroying your information. Are your people trained? There's lots of really good companies that will do, they call pen test, penetration testing. Well, they will actually come out or actually remotely do this, test your employees to see, do they respond to the phishing emails? Do they click on the text they shouldn't have clicked on? And you use it as a training exercise in a safe environment, something that our industry really has to look at because we protect Social Security information, payroll information, credit card information for our clients and our talent, and we need to be vanguards of that protection. And then the last threat, which we don't really talk much about, is direct sourcing. This is the larger buyers of staffing saying, we don't need staffing companies. We can start to develop our own talent pools. In some cases, actually partnering with larger staffing organizations to directly source temporary talent. For most people listening in today, that's probably not as big a threat, but like VMS and MSP that has taken a big chunk of the industry, we have to watch these trends that happen with the larger buyers because they tend to get pushed down to the mid-market where most of us live. Then there are things that we can't control. I mentioned the Ukraine and Russia, the geopolitical issues, inflation, and supply chain disruptions. We can't control them, we can't change them, but we absolutely need to be on top of them and anticipate what impact will it have on costs for our business, on pricing. This is not a time to be locking in long-term price agreements with your clients because you may have to raise pay. And if you're locked into your bill rates, you may be really stuck that you can't fill job orders because you can't afford to pay enough. This is the time to go back on contracts you're locked into and talk to your clients and say, look, if we don't collectively do something, we will not be able to recruit. And this is the time really to be looking at how can we better partner with our clients to deal with the things we cannot control because you can't control them, but your clients can't either. And if their supply chain is disrupted, if their talent supply is disrupted, if their wages are escalating, that's not just a staffing industry problem, that's your client's issue too. And more than ever, we need to work closely with clients on strategies to share that risk. So what's going to be driving the industry in 2022? Number one was the talent crisis. You're going to hear this theme over and over again. It's no longer a talent war. Barry described it as a crisis. We are facing unprecedented challenges in the labor market, and they're not about to go away. The second driver is flexible work, and we'll share some data in a minute on the percentage of the workforce that wants these flexible work arrangements and what the impact is for staffing. And then finally, the digital transformation, and you're going to hear this in one of my takeaways, is that this felt more like a technology conference than it did a staffing conference for the first time ever. There's always been a lot of technology in staffing, but I would say it drove the conference content for the first time ever. All right, so the talent crisis. This is kind of scary. The labor force participation rate is at 62.2%. That's the level it was at back in 1977. The peak of labor force participation was in the year 2000, and we're a couple of percentage points behind that peak. It represents millions of workers. In fact, that shortage is millions, and then we also have the fact that we've had this great resignation where 4.2 million people have left the workforce in the past 2 years. We just have fewer people available to work. 3.9 million people quit in December alone. That's 31% over 2020, a more normal year for quits. And then related to that is the Great Retirement, something I had never heard of before the conference, but that 19.3% of the workforce retired in 2021. That's 2.4 million more people than they expected to retired early. So you subtract 4.2 million and 3.9 million and 2.4 million out of the workforce, and you're losing a ton of people that you need to fill open job orders. And you're at the point right now that job openings are greater than available talent by about 4.7 million jobs. So your clients are facing a game of musical chairs. There simply aren't enough people to fill the job, so they have to look at new strategies to get those roles filled. So what is the solution to this? Well, there's a few things you can do. You can find ways to help your clients make workers more productive, using technology to automate process, using technology to, in some cases, replace human labor because it can't be sourced. You see that in Japan, where they have hotels that there are robots that do check-in and robots that do room service. Then we use automation in conjunction with humans to get rid of the drudgery tasks. So the humans can be doing more productive work, but that goes hand in hand with redesigning the process so the humans are focused on what humans are best at, and probably most important, and this is a big topic of discussion, upskilling. And what should our industry's role be in helping to retrain people? Are you helping to create a more productive workforce? Are you partnering with trade schools and colleges and maybe even high school programs to help people get better professional skills, the kind of skills your clients are going to need in 2022 and 2023 as they find alternative ways to get rid of the low skill jobs because they will automate or use technology to displace those jobs and putting those workers into better roles. Immigration. We didn't really get into it in the conference, but historically, a lot of the talent shortage has been filled through immigration. So will the US government open the doors wider to help fill this? We don't know. There may be opportunities to talk to clients about, are there pools of talent in your community, pools of immigrants coming in from different parts of the world that maybe you could focus on recruiting to develop better access to a talent pool than other companies have. Then the obvious one, keep people working. Ironically, the current inflation might help because we have a lot of people who left the workforce, and rising costs means people's government pay, people's savings, it doesn't go as far. And that may help put more people back into the workforce. But also for your company, if you can do things like automation to help engage your candidates more fully, to retain and redeploy talent using automation tools, and at the very end of this, we'll talk about some upcoming webinars where we're going to discuss this, so that you don't have the attrition, the 300% plus annualized turnover that we see in temporary staff. All right, with flexible work, this is sort of fascinating. 62% of internal staff in the staffing industry rate remote work is very important, up from 39% in 2016. Your recruiters, your salespeople, they want to be working remotely. 48% want to be full-time remote, and only 9% want to be full-time in the office. And this has huge implications, because if we're not giving people that flexibility and somebody else is, you're going to have more attrition than you want to have. Now, this is also an opportunity because staffing firms are expecting to see 10 times the number of remote jobs for temps. It's going to go from 2% of temporary jobs to 20% this year. So are you going to be good at filling remote roles? That is such an opportunity to drive sales growth. Now, with commercial staffing, particularly light industrial, it's a lot less remote because it's hands-on work. It's only 2 to 5% remote. So the numbers of the 20% tend to be more technical, professional, creative, legal. Staffing, commercial is a lot less, and healthcare is a lot less, with the exception of telemedicine. So where are the big opportunities for you? It's winning the recruiting battles. Obvious solution here, but not just the active candidates, like everybody's spending more on job posts, but what is the pipeline being created for the 70% of passive talent that are interested in new opportunities, but they're not reading the job posts? How about remote hiring? The talent shortage isn't necessarily a lack of people. It's a lack of people in the right place with the right skills when they're needed. In staffing companies, we need to start thinking not locally in our own market, but regionally, statewide, nationally, internationally, at how we become experts at sourcing people who can do the work our clients need to get done wherever in the world they are. And there are very few staffing companies that are currently developing global workforce management solutions. It is an opportunity even for small to mid-sized companies to help your clients globalize their workforce to get things done. And then, can you create more flexible work arrangements? This is big in commercial staffing, redefining how jobs get done. So maybe it's not 3 8-hour shifts in a day. Maybe it's 2 12s. Maybe it's a lot of shorter 4-hour shifts and giving people more schedule flexibility as long as you can consistently provide enough people to do the work that needs to get done, and working with your clients and how can we build more flexibility in, because the more you can offer, the easier it is to recruit. All right, digital transformation, the end of Barry's talk. So the last really big digital transformation in our industry was VMS. And that now accounts for 85% of the purchase by large buyers. That's why I mentioned earlier that some of the trends we're seeing with large buyers, that's the things that the rest of us will face in several years, because VMS has been around for a long time with large buyers, but every year it's gotten to be a larger percentage of the staffing buy as it's been pushed down to more mid-sized buyers of staffing services. So the next major disruption appears to be talent platforms, self-service staffing, and you're going to see an example of that in one of the other talks coming up, so I'll save that for then. And then implementing more talent acquisition technology, advertising. You've heard us talk about programmatic. This is advertising technology to help you get more return on every dollar you spent in job advertising. Then there's sourcing automation tools, candidate engagement tools. Everywhere in the talent acquisition process, from the initial outreach through fulfillment, there are new software tools being created to automate things recruiters used to do manually, to make your recruiters more productive, give them more time to focus on serving your candidates. So the big opportunities is how can you integrate these talent platforms into your business? And I said more on this in a minute. How can you help your recruiters to be more productive and improve your candidate experience using technology to eliminate the gaps? Oh, so, pardon me, switched a little too quick there. So that was the highlights. Barry's thing is these 3 key points: the talent crisis, flexibility, digital transformation. After today's presentation, you want to take a look at your own company and say, how are you addressing them? What strategies are you working on in conjunction with your clients to address the talent crisis coming forward the rest of this year? Are you planning to add more flexibility into your own internal staff and to the staff your clients are hiring? Are you thinking about digital transformation? Are you thinking about more remote solutions? Are you thinking about how to radically change your delivery models? Things like where do services get delivered and how do they get delivered and what's done by a human and what's done by an algorithm to provide a better experience, a better outcome for your clients and for your talent. All right, and now we'll move on. I'm going to cover the next presentation as well, which was by Dan Heath. This one won't be as lengthy as Barry's. That was for the biggest one. But Dan presented a 3-point framework for bringing change in. And the picture you're looking at is really his 3-point framework, and a great way to remember it. And Dan said, if you remember nothing else from my presentation, remember this image. So you're thinking about the elephant as the change that you're trying to get to happen. But elephants can be pretty solid in their ways. So first thing we need to do is we need to direct the rider who's guiding the elephant. And people naturally resist change. But often it's not that they're resisting, it's that they simply don't understand it, and we have to add clarity to change. And change management really starts with defining who needs to behave differently in your company and how you want them to behave. If you don't know the behaviors that are needed, don't even start trying to fix a problem because you won't go down the right path. One of the ways that I really liked in Dan's presentation to figure out what's the behavior to change isn't to start with what's wrong, but to start with what's right. Look at your business and say, what is really working well? And then ask yourself, are the processes, are the procedures, the steps that our team implements that works really well, are they the standard? Are they the process used by all? As a leader, don't just celebrate success, study it. Determine the core behaviors that make your recruiters and make your salespeople successful. Once you've identified those behaviors, then you can focus on directing the right or directing the organization to make those habits the standard. Now we have to motivate the elephant. And this is interesting. This one hit home for me. Is often when we want people to change, we give them lots of information about why change is good, why it will benefit the company, why it will benefit themselves. And the problem is information is not motivational. You actually have to think about how do we create a desire for change, people to want the outcome of what you're going to accomplish. And Dan suggested a couple of ways to do this. One is shrink the change so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. Big change is scary, which is demotivational. So start with the easily manageable first step. What's the very first thing we need to do? That process that's working. What's one thing we could implement this week that starts us down the path? We need to use this to build inertia because as you have success after success after success, change management becomes much easier. The other thing Dan suggested is to make the problems more visible. Use illustrations, analogies to get people to not just see the problems, but to feel the problems. What does it feel like when your client has an unfilled job order? What is the impact of that change in their business? If you're a fan of Neil Rockerman spin selling, you think about what's the current situation? What's the problem, the pain caused by that situation? And then the I in spin is what's the implication? What's it mean? What's it feel like? It's exactly what Dan's talking about, is to really internalize why the need for change exists. Ideally, if we make these positive changes, here's all the good that happens, here's how much better you'll feel, here's how much more financially successful you'll be. But the more we can make people feel the desire for change, the more likely it is to happen. And finally, we want to shape the path, which is creating an environment that makes the desired behavior easier and the non-desired behavior harder. So we think about the things people naturally do. People will do whatever is the path of least resistance. So if we allow people to do what their old habit was, and that's the easiest thing, versus a new thing, which is a harder process, they won't do the new thing. So we have to look at the process and make the new way the easy way and add more barriers to the old way so that it forces the change. And then another thing that leaders need to do is accept failure along the way. The elephant's going to wander off the path. Your job is to make sure that that doesn't derail the elephant, but that you're reshaping the path to bring it back on track, to learn from the mistakes and to get better. All right, last one for me on the keynotes is there was a panel discussion on the talent crisis, and some of the leaders got just a few bullets from this one. This one is a little scary. What we're feeling in recruiting challenges, this isn't pandemic related. This isn't people's fear to go back to work. This isn't just financial incentive. It's a demographic shift. The baby boomers retiring at an accelerating rate and not enough labor behind them to fill in means that we're going to be facing these extreme talent shortages for years to come. It's actually a good thing for the staffing industry. Businesses, our clients, they need that technology and automation to take the bad jobs so people can take the better ones, kind of reiterating what Barry said. And the staffing industry's job is to help clients see where people should be. I love this comment, which is to think of your workers like consumers in an e-commerce, like people going to Amazon to make a purchase. Your employees, your temporary associates, they are expecting that e-commerce type of experience, fast, frictionless. Are you delivering it? Is it that easy to apply to a job, to go to work, to get paid? Is all the information they need right in front of them? Can they access it from their phone? If they can't have that Amazon-like experience with you, they're going to go to somewhere else where they can. Minimum wage, the concept, according to these executives, is gone. It's irrelevant. There's now in every market for every job a required wage. And if you're not at that required wage, people will not take the jobs. And this may be a better thing to talk to your clients about is what are the required wages? Again, our industry has to find ways to upskill and reskill, whether we're doing it in-house. Some of the staffing companies on this panel, they actually have purchased, these are big companies, purchased training schools. They are doing all kinds of skill development from IT skills to forklift drivers. They are teaching people how to make more money, how to have more rewarding careers. But other companies that are smaller, they're looking for people doing the training and partnering with them and then using those training schools as a feeder source for talent, essentially helping to become almost the career placement department for the training centers. And again, it's going to sound redundant because I said it in Barry's presentation, but these CEOs all echoed Barry to say we need to look at the workforce as being global, not local, because every one of your clients, even if they're a small local company, is going to be able to get some of their work done more efficiently somewhere else in the world. And as a staffing company, your job is going to become figuring that out and delivering the work getting done wherever it's most efficient. And in terms of hiring, we need to really rethink what's truly required versus what's desired and eliminate artificial barriers to hiring. The most common is, do jobs really require a college degree, or is equivalent experience enough? Are those skills that somebody needs to be successful in the job needed day one, or are they trainable? So the more you can work with your clients on reducing the requirements and converting them to desired skills, the easier it is to find the talent they need. More than ever, our job is to consult with people, our candidates, to show them where they can enhance their skills and increase their employability. We have to truly become career coaches in the years ahead. If we're just order fillers, if we treat our temporary associates transactionally, we will not retain them, and we will have more and more unfilled job openings. All right, Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk to the next keynote, Natalie Cogan from company's name I love, Happier Inc.
Thank you, David. I really enjoyed Natalie Cogan's keynote topic. She was talking about beyond burnout, emotional fitness skills to help you and your team thrive. She shared practical and powerful practices that are simple and effective in reducing stress and improving well-being of you and your entire team. It's definitely something I can learn from and what I want to apply to my life. Emotional fitness is the skill of cultivating a more supportive relationship with yourself, your thoughts, your emotions, and as a result with other people. And to avoid burnout and be able to function, it's really important to work on your emotional fitness. And just like anything else that you want to get better at, you just need to practice. To be a great leader, you must make your emotional fitness your #1 priority. So by her definition, you are a leader if you positively impact others' capacity to thrive, and you cannot positively impact others' ability to thrive before you positively impact your own. She had mentioned that leaders wear an emotional whiteboard that their teams see. And when emotions are negative and they don't know what's causing your emotions, they begin to make up scenarios and think that something is wrong. So for example, they might think that you're in a bad mood because you're mad at them, or they're about to lose their job, or even worse, the whole team is about to be let go. Human emotions and energy are very contagious. People can sense how you feel, and they can ultimately catch it. So it's important at work because the manager and direct report are the most impactful work relationship, and it ultimately affects everybody's well-being. So our brain is wired for negativity bias. It's a survival mechanism. And the best way to beat that negativity bias is to focus on gratitude. David, can you skip to the next slide? Thank you. The #1 characteristic of the most successful teams is psychological trust. Trusting that you can go to a workplace, you can be open about how you feel and what challenges you have. You can build trust with your team by acknowledging how you feel and just being open with them. For example, you can say something like, I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I'm feeling a little cranky. And that would squash any negative bias that's out there. Emotional fitness is absolutely essential. When you invest in yourself, you perform at the highest level of your potential. You're more productive, you're more creative, you make better decisions, and you have a better ability to help others. So investing in yourself and building a more positive culture is really important. A few practices that she shared from her book, and I think her book has more ideas in it, but what she highlighted in the session was take a moment at least once a day and ask yourself, how am I feeling? But don't try to fix it right then. Just become aware of how you feel. Take a few minutes every day for a mini fuel up. It helps to put 15 to 20 minutes on your calendar to take a break and disconnect. Take that time to check in with how you're feeling and what you can do to fuel your energy. For example, taking a walk outside. It doesn't matter what you do. However, she mentions that it's super important for you to switch your physical surrounding. Get up and change what you're looking at. And then also, she points out that make it a point to remind your team to take a break. Sometimes your team needs permission to take that break. She talks about practicing gratitude in the morning before you open your email or before watching the news. She mentions taking 3 specific things that you're grateful for and write them down. Writing things down help us register these things. So take a moment to see and appreciate the good moments and people in your life. The practices that she shared can be applied for yourself, but it can also be applied to your team. And so she challenged us with doing team practice. So take a minute to share one-on-one gratitude with a person each day, or she recommended at the start of each team meeting to share something specific that you're grateful for. And it's important to know that you go first because people will do what you practice, not what you say. David, you're up next.
All right, thanks, Kathy. And lots of good things. And I think Natalie, the backstory that I loved about her is she wasn't always the person giving these what feel like very soft bits of advice from someone with a company named Happiness Inc. She was the hard-charging corporate executive with pretty much an amazing background. And at one point, she sort of woke up and said, I can't do this anymore. I need to have a better life. I'm waking up every day unhappy. And what Kathy just shared was really the playbook for how to turn your emotional well-being around so that you can be not only happier in your own life, but you can become a better leader. All right, and the last of the keynote sessions was one on executive perspectives, and we had 3 executives give mini TED Talk style presentations. So Bert Bean, Dan Campbell, and April Hanson. So Bert is the CEO of Insight Global, and I didn't know a lot about this company. So Bert mentioned that when he took over, they were a $600 million company in 2012, and by 2017, he had helped grow it to 1.9 billion. And one of the things that Bert said that I really liked is when our industry is strong, our clients see us as a partner and not as a commodity. And he was on stage saying, look, I'll tell you everything we do and how we do it, because I want all of my competitors to be as good as we are, because when as an industry we're strong, as an industry we get better. And I thought that was just such a powerful message. This one was big. Culture makes or breaks an office. So this was Bert's biggest aha. Probably not an aha to a lot of people listening, but in 2017, Insight Global was growing very quickly, and they hired 1,600 new recruiters. And some of you are going, oh my God, I can't imagine hiring 6 new recruiters this year, but 1,600. And in that same year, 1,100 of them quit. 1,100 quits in their recruiting team. I can't imagine the impact on customer service. But what Bert did is he got his leadership team together for an offsite retreat to really figure out what the company was all about. And he did an exercise where he got the team to really focus on what their core values were and the purpose of their organization, the mission they were really driven by. And instead of being internally focused on the recruiter, the external focus on what they were doing for people in their lives and clients they were serving. And that the leadership team all agreed on a very strong set of core values. And then they started to hire, train, and promote based on those core values. So what happened? Well, they found out that being purpose-driven is really good for business. It affected real changes in how people acted, and they became more outwardly focused. In between 2018 to 2021, they grew to $3.5 billion in revenue, 35% growth alone in 2021. Just absolutely powerful results from living by their values. The second TED Talk was Dan Campbell, and this one required an MBA in corporate finance because Dan talked all about his experience in the M&A world and his selling of Higher Dynamics, a company that he founded and grew to $121 million at the time of sale. And then the company today is now at $450 million. And what Dan said that's probably relevant to everybody here as you think about exit strategies from your company is private equity has effectively replaced the public markets for staffing exits. You're most likely to sell to a private equity company. Why would you sell your business? Well, because if you're an owner, so much of your personal net worth, probably the biggest asset you own is your business. And someday you probably want to get the money out for that asset. Our industry typically runs in 7 to 10 year cycles, and you're going to get to the point in your career where you're saying, yeah, we're at a near peak and I don't want to go through the next down cycle. So it's a good time to sell when things are good. Why would you consider private equity? A lot of people who built a business, I know for me personally, the Haley Marketing brand, it's, we joke, I'm not even sure it's a joke, that Haley Marketing is our fourth child. We wouldn't want to lose that brand. And so a lot of you are built companies where you don't want them to disappear and just be integrated by somebody else. But with private equity, you're very likely to keep and grow the brand that you founded. It's going to allow you to accelerate growth for your own business by giving you the capital to do more acquisitions to accelerate your company's brand building. It can allow you, if you want, to stay actively involved in the business, possibly even as a continuing equity holder where you're not selling 100% of your stake. And Dan called that rolling the equity, and based on Higher Dynamics success, he said, I wish I had rolled some more than I did, because once we had the private equity partner, their capital, their financial leadership, they were actually able to grow, as you saw, 121 million to 450, and the stake of the equity that he retained gave him a second bite at the apple next time that private equity company goes to sell Higher Dynamics. And finally, we had April Hanson, who is a group president with SIA Healthcare, and this is the platform one I mentioned earlier. So she noted that SIA said that travel nursing had been very clunky. Recruiters held all the cards in the hiring process, and they had a goal of they wanted recruiting to be, for travel nursing, to be a lot more like care.com. That it's a seamless, easy experience for both the purchaser of the service and the care provider. So they made a decision in 2020 to go all in on the platform they were building called SIA. The platform became a fully transparent staffing platform for clients and providers. Everybody, client, candidate, could see into the system, including the pay packages being offered to the nurses. Both sides, employer and job seekers, saw all the details. It was no longer about recruiters being negotiators. In fact, the recruiter's role changed from negotiating bill rates and pay rates to being career advisors, helping nurses to find the opportunities that were best for them. This will blow you away. Today, their platform is getting 1 million job views and 117,000 self-submittals per week. So the lessons that April said is putting the technology together to go from their legacy systems to being a platform-based company was incredibly hard, much more difficult than they anticipated. If you build a platform, you buy a platform, it doesn't mean people will get there. It required influence, and in the case of SIA, a huge investment in PPC advertising to build the candidate marketplace, and a huge investment in their sales team to build the client side of the marketplace. And you have to obsess about the people as much as the technology, because the platform-based staffing business is still a staffing business. It's still about putting people to work. and you have to care so much about that experience and treating people well. If you just think like a tech company and the people are just transactional, your platform will not succeed. All right, and that brings us to the breakout sessions. So let's go through some of what we learned at the various breakouts. First up, Ryan.
Excellent. Thank you, David. The first concurrent session I attended on Tuesday was strategies for tactics and tactics for success in industrial staffing. Francesca Profeta from SIA moderated, and the featured panelists were Jessica Johnson, VP East for PDS Tech, and Billy Millam, CEO of EmployBridge. And the session started with a confirmation of the rise in wages that we're all aware of, and the increase in technology spend across staffing firms in the sector. And Billy from EmployBridge pointed out that, save for the Ukraine war, the three main topics in recent news all put the spotlight on staffing. It's COVID, and he mentioned how Omicron had hit hard, but fortunately very fast. Labor, and lastly, the supply chain. All of those highly relevant for staffing. And with the spotlight on staffing, one thing that becomes painfully obvious is how much friction there is for the candidate. Billy gave some strong advice here, and I think he was definitely preaching to the Haley marketing choir, because we say this day in and day out. He said, go through your staffing firm's apply process, start to finish. It will probably make you sick to your stomach. And this is where the technology investment in industrial staffing really needs to focus, improve the candidate experience, and they talked about the holy grail being a true one-click application for jobs. Jessica from PDS Tech added that she asked two family members, and I love the two that she chose, her 70-year-old mother and her 22-year-old nephew, asked them both to go through the apply process. Her mother could not complete it, and the Gen Z nephew struggled. And his complaint was about the repeated questions and the multiple pages he had to wade through. So they focused on fixing that first and foremost. Then they shifted their focus to the question, what's working aside from increasing wages? Jessica shared one of their really creative strategies, which was to offer surge rates to help overcome the humps in massive shortages without artificially and permanently inflating the rates. She said back in Q4, they decided to say for certain jobs, hey, for the next 3 months, let's get them making $2 more an hour. Now they're seeing retention even after the surge rates ended. And it also gave them a chance to train and upskill in those 3 months for those who wanted to secure the higher pay. They had the time to level up. Billy said that good old-fashioned grit got them through. In May of 2020, they convinced their team they had a plan, and they executed with efforts like putting QR codes on pizza boxes to download their app, along with running outdoor job fairs during the pandemic. Jessica then spoke to the success of automation with nurture campaigns that check in to ask, hey, how did your first day go? How was your first week? And it really means a lot to the employees. And there's tools like Sense and Herefish, we'll talk about a little later, that can do the heavy lifting to improve the candidate engagement automatically for you. So it's not additional burden on staff. And then as far as overall challenges, Billy referenced that variation stat earlier about the 47% of workers wanting to work remote 5 days a week. So as you all know, most industrial roles are the exact opposite. So the key becomes to identify the people who want to show up in person to manufacture those widgets. These are your people, or your tribe, as Seth Godin would say. Jessica spoke to confronting their clients about being perceived as a bad place to work. And her recommendation was to do this with data. So they actually went out and surveyed the candidate base to be able to show the client, hey, this is what people are actually saying. That can help them take action, or it can help you move on. Billy made the point that they're more empowered than ever to tell certain clients they aren't the best fit. And lastly, Billy made the point that we'd all end up hearing echoed throughout the week. You have to think like a retailer. And this made a big impression on me. He talked about how Starbucks, they identified 360 personality types. And if they spend $1 of marketing to their top 10 personality types, it's worth $1.50 in return. But if they spend it on the bottom 300, it's a 10 cent return. So apply science to understanding who would be a great call center rep or a forklift operator, and then spend your efforts going after them. And you must capture them with a really simple application first to get them in the door raising their hand. Okay, over to you, Kathy.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. My first session was recruiting strategies, tools, and best practices for professional staffing firms. It was moderated by Kirsten Buck from SIA, and the featured panelists were Matt Denham, Senior VP Delivery Strategy at Lorien Global, Angie Keller, President at Randstad Engineering, Adam Lombardi, Senior Director Delivery Transformation at Kforce, and Janet Mark, CEO at AirSwift. The panel of experts shared their perspectives on what was working today in regards to skills, tools, and mindsets in order to have success. And although they shared a lot of great things, a few key takeaways were automate as much as possible. So they suggested to focus on the top of the funnel activities that could help with speed improvements, reduction in ratios, setting up interviews, scheduling, and search and match for your candidates. If you had the right tools in place, then of course it provides a better candidate experience, which you're hearing already throughout this presentation is a really big piece and important for staffing. And then of course, use automation tools to help the recruiters get on the phone quicker with candidates, because as you'll probably hear throughout the presentation again, speed to the candidate is really important in this challenging environment. I thought one of a really cool idea that they had mentioned is being able to use technology to mask phone numbers to show a local phone number so that you can recruit for anyone, anywhere in the world. They talked about when it comes to new tool implementation and change, that tech is easy, but change is hard. So it's important to have clear intent for tool implementation and process change. So they wanted you to start thinking about considering rollout strategies that talk more to the why you're having the change and less of the what before the tool is in place, to really start conversations and communicate any issues internally, right? And so this will stop or help overcome some of the challenges or pushback you may get from your internal team members. They recommended starting at the very top level with the C-suite, then roll it down to the VPs, then down to the managers, and scale it down from there. And so you want to make sure that you define communication and have clear intention for why you're making the change to align with the different personas that you have within your organization that will ultimately be impacted before the implementation. You can also start creating champions or ambassadors to spread the word, to help create that excitement of how their jobs will be easier and get others on board. And so that'll just make that new tool implementation a lot easier for your organization. They talked about candidates are holding all the cards. Again, I think this is a common theme here. They shared statistics. 76% of all candidates have at least two other offers in hand, including the one that you're offering them. They also said 40% of candidates have 4 or more offers. So candidates have many opportunities. It's very important, more than ever, to keep communication and engagement very consistent. And obviously the key is quick communication, and personal communication shows to have the best response over mass messaging. They talked about how video is more personal and engaging. Engage them in the beginning and then keep them engaged throughout the whole process by finding ways to make candidates more comfortable and obviously make them feel like they know you, right? So there's that trust factor. They talked about having a hiring manager send a video for their first day. Just welcome to our company. We're excited to have you on this assignment. And this is what you're going to be doing to cause that trust and that comfort level with that new candidate. It's also helpful to get specific feedback from candidates on the process and share that information with your clients so that you can make changes for a better experience going forward. And then they talked about, don't forget about your existing database. Give your recruiters access to an open CMS. Strip away any candidate ownership. Every recruiter can have access to everyone's candidate This is to maximize what's best for the candidate. So one candidate nowadays fits so many different job titles, and really focus more on the skills than that job title. Use automation tools to engage with current and past employees for referrals, and also to make sure you're keeping your database fresh and updated with resumes and interest. Ryan, you're up next.
Thank you, Kathy. So this next session, direct hire strategies for good times and bad, it was by far the most contentious, and I guess that made it the most entertaining panel. I attended in Austin with some strong contrarian opinions shared from left to right on the state of direct hire and where it's headed. We had John Alexander, CEO of Lyle Alexander, Chandra Pappas, EVP of Nelson, and Aaron Stewart, the CVO of Job.com. And Chandra shared that they had their best year last year ever. They had several million-dollar producers, and that the market's really been hot. But she noted direct hire is always the canary in the coal mine, so they're always watching for signals of change. The sweet spot where they make most of their placements is the age group 25 to 40 with 2 to 5 years of experience. John then shared his perspective on why recruiting is getting harder. He said, people ask if talent is in control. Do ghosts strike you as people in control? And that was thought-provoking, and we'll talk more about the ghosting in a bit, but he's implying that the behavior is not born of conviction. It's really born of rather indecision and confusion. And he offered this slogan, the great resolution over the great resignation that we've been hearing, reflecting that people are indeed taking control of their careers. You pointed out back in 2016, people were disengaged, but they were stagnant. They were staying in place, and now they've been stirred to take action. But with this feeding frenzy, there really comes a paradox of choice, which he referred to as the Tinderization of opportunities. And then moving into the core controversial topic, Chandra, who represented the most moderate position of the three, and I guess appropriately, she was sitting in the middle of the stage, she offered the position of touch before tech. She shared that you can absolutely automate the outbound reach, but that for placing jobs that pay $90,000 to $200,000 a year, selling that service that they provide, that they're 100% tech, she just doesn't think is viable. At Nelson, they are journey mapping. That's a term Sense uses in their nurture automation solution, and that can really help with the engagement and automate that. But she stressed that the content really has to be relevant, otherwise it falls flat. And so Aaron from Job.com, he looked like his head was going to explode when he heard that you can't say that you're 100% tech. And he retorted that, hey, we millennials don't need the human touch. In fact, we may prefer the digital touch. And he was speaking for himself. I'm a little older than a millennial, but his point was taken. And the panel then dug more into John's mention of ghosting, and he talked about how he believes it's a symptom of a candidate who doesn't know what they want. Then Chandra suggested that she believes many ghost because they do want something else, and that they're not seeing what they want. They found at Nelson that ghosting went down for them when they made tactical changes to ramp up engagement, like the nurture campaigns, those journeys that they instituted for engaging their talent better. And she also shared the one positive that came from ghosting. Their recruiters, they really had to learn the hard skills. They all have to be so on their game now. They become expert detectives as to everything that can go wrong. So that's been a benefit to them. And then the panel was asked about what they believe the best ways were to grow direct hire business. John shared the story brand model. My ears really perked up because this is something that is a favorite of ours at Haley Marketing. This is a methodology, and if you'd like to learn more about it, you can check out Donald Miller. This is his baby. But it's about telling the story of the hero on a journey. And John points out there are two heroes. The first is your end customer as it relates to your solutions, but don't neglect to make the candidate the hero of your employer brand. Then Chandra discussed the success they've had with growing the quote unquote cradle to grave relationships, meaning that often their placement in accounting and finance, that becomes their client in 3 to 5 years. So maintain that relationship all the way through and really reaping the rewards as they reach out for their hiring needs. So both John and Chandra, again, a point of contention here, they strongly agreed, hey, their candidates today, they're on LinkedIn. That's unquestionably where their bread is buttered today for direct hire for the roles they're placing today. Then Aaron from job.com, he made the passionate case that the future audience will not be on LinkedIn. He said, hey, LinkedIn's been around 19 years, and the people out there under 30 are on TikTok. And the TikTok video resumes beta, now this didn't officially launch, but he pointed out it got 360 million likes. And he argued that LinkedIn is so watered down with the business development noise that it's really unattractive to new users. So he was making the case that just like the way job words were ridiculed back in the day, they're ubiquitous now. Same for LinkedIn, and those are your core tools that you're using. So the future he's painting might look ridiculous today, but we know change is coming. And that's it for me on this one. David, I believe you're up next.
All right, thanks, Ryan. And just to let everybody know, I'm checking the time. We've got about 5 minutes till 3 o'clock Eastern. We've got a few sessions to go through. We may go a few minutes over, but if you have to leave, we totally understand. We are recording. And like all of our webinars, you'll be able to check out the recording at lunchwithhaley.com. All right, so the next session I went to was one, not surprising, I was interested in marketing leadership in a new world. And Ursula Williams, Joan Marie Biley, Adam Bleibtreu, Leslie Vickery, and Teresa Creech were on this panel. And the very first question that they were asked is just, what is marketing? And I love the first response is, it's a profit center that drives sales, recruiting, and culture. And that today, 80% of the sale or the hire is made before a person talks to your sales rep or your recruiter. So as our industry becomes more like e-commerce, marketing is what we do to ensure we're delivering the experience people crave. Love that definition. Next question that was asked by Ursula was, well, how do staffing companies position themselves as thought leaders? And the response was simple and concise: data plus insights. In recruiting, it's not just about content, though. It's also about helping people to live a better life. That's what we're doing when we place them in a new job. And clients look to staffing for ideas to the problems their human resources department faces. So if you want to be a thought leader on the talent side, show people how you're helping them, how staffing companies are helping them to live better lives. And on the client side, get into those tactical, tough to handle HR issues, and you're much more likely to be seen as an industry expert and thought leader. All right, this is a favorite of mine. How do you align marketing with sales and recruiting in these days with IT? All the panelists said the same thing: communication, communication, communication. Get sales, recruiting, and marketing together in planning meetings. Embed marketing into sales and recruiting to be part of meetings and discussions. When you're working with the IT department, marketing should own your candidate experience. IT can provide and oversee the tools to deliver. So keep people in the appropriate lane so they can best work together. Next one wasn't really a question as much as it was just a discussion, is marketing just for clients and candidates? And because these people all work with or work in support of larger staffing organizations, they really all focus very heavily on internal team member communications, and in some cases actually market communications because they have to do corporate reporting. But you need to make sure everybody understands the company mission, vision, values, and goals. A lot of you will be getting our next issue of Big Ideas. I will let you know there's going to be a link in there to a post I just wrote about creating differentiation based on your mission, vision, values, and goals. Because I totally agree with these panelists that if sales and recruiting and marketing are not speaking the same language about what the company's purpose is, like we heard earlier from Insight Global, or how we act and behave, our values, you're going to have a very inconsistent organization and a hard time retaining clients and candidates. And also, marketing's job is to help celebrate the company's culture, to keep people internally connected and also keep your associates connected with you. And finally, the panel was asked to share some social media best practices. And everybody recommended that where you can, and even where you can't, get your senior leadership to build personal brands, that very often the company's brand is a personification of its CEO or of its senior management team. Also to remember, and I think it's kind of obvious, that all social media channels are not equal. You need to use the right channel based on who you want to reach, where they are online, and what you want to accomplish. The argument that Ryan was talking about between LinkedIn versus TikTok, well, yes, you may have more of the younger generation on TikTok, but they didn't go there to find a job. And what we're seeing is that as people, particularly we saw this millennials, as they came up through the workforce, the millennials all said, oh, we don't use email. Well, now they do. And you will see as people enter the workforce, they will bring some of their social media habits with them and they will adapt. So you need to make sure you're using the right channels based on your objectives. And maybe the most important point, with social media, it needs constant care and feeding. So if you're making a commitment to social, it's a commitment for the long haul. All right, Kathy, up next.
Thank you, David. I attended another session for solving the talent crisis track. This one was focused on tools and best practices for commercial staffing firms. In this session, the panelists discussed the biggest challenges were too many jobs, not enough candidates, and to put a cherry on top, there's recruiter shortages. So we listened in on how they addressed how to get a steady stream of candidates. And they shared that it takes various methods to get in front of those potential candidates. They talked about using technology to make it easier for candidates to find you through SEO on your website, jobs on your website, advertise on job boards, advertise on social media, and utilize automation to have consistent presence and to move those candidates through the process. They talked about how important it was that commercial staffing companies should get boots on the ground and get out into the community to have a local presence, be a multifaceted brand, and let candidates know that you're accessible to them. Having your recruiters join meetup groups and build their own personal brand will help because people want to work with people they like and they trust. And it's more important than ever, and it should be a major priority, is to focus on retention and do not neglect your existing employees. The recruiting strategies and tactics they are seeing success with were having a referral program that pay after a certain number of hours, or one of the panelists mentioned creating a referral program where they can pick their own bonus and let them choose what's important to them. Look at your opportunities and decide what's fillable and what's not, and focus on the ones that are fillable. Obviously, make your jobs more attractive. It's more about understanding what's important to the candidate. Make sure you have a flexible attendance policy. Work on your online reputation, super important nowadays. Make that very easy for the candidate to do. One of the recommendations was to have QR codes sitting at the recruiter desk. So as the candidate is sitting there, they can scan and provide immediate feedback. And then of course, I said this before, and I think I've heard Ryan or David mention it too, having speed to the candidate is essential. Competition is high, so we have to have our recruiters acting fast. And then of course, you want to boost your team's efficiency with getting workflow automation in place. Get tech stacks that work together that actually help save time and create efficiencies. Make sure you're assessing where you have gaps before investing in technology. So you want to think about why, what, and how are you going to use it? Vet your technology, laws, and regulations. Someone on the panel had mentioned that early on, they didn't do that and they found out there were some issues with certain technology in their area. So make sure you're vetting out the laws and regulations there. Do some A/B test automations so that you can test out different tones and the different timings to see what's most successful. And then of course, make sure you have clean data. Consider a programmatic solution to help you with job boards. Utilize chatbots to help candidate engagement, screening, and scheduling. And then use automation to engage with the candidates on a consistent basis. Ryan, you're up next.
Thanks, Kathy. And that transitions well into a session on AI chatbots. I'm going to give the short version of this. And if you take nothing else away, most of us probably only have one or two examples of what a chatbot is in our mind, but Pankaj Jindal, who's co-founder of Sense, they've got their own chatbot solution. He did a good job of educating on 6 different use cases. So first is the website chatbot that you might all be aware of for sourcing and attracting. And the goal here is to provide a 24/7 first-class candidate experience. That nurse that might only have a 15-minute break at midnight, can she get a quick answer to a common question? Can you get her right to what she's really looking for in searching and applying for a position? So real-time help around the clock and accelerating the speed to completing an application is the goal here. Next one is QR code and text to apply chatbots. So, the user sends a text or scans a QR code and the chatbot replies to them. As more people get accustomed to asynchronous communication, meaning that you can pause it and come back hours later, this type of interaction is super convenient, and it's probably the main reason why younger generations prefer text to phone calls. The goal here is to decrease drop-off and to qualify your candidates faster. Number 3 is screening. Recent time studies show that 70% of a recruiter's time is scheduling, screening, and follow-up. With a screening chatbot, you can customize the screening flow based on different job recs. And the beauty here is you send it to everyone at once, and it's customized based on their job interest. So the goal is to fill your recruiters' calendars with qualified, vetted candidates and give them that time back. Fourth is a scheduling chatbot. So this can reduce no-shows, which is a huge problem for pretty much everybody, by giving automated reminders. It makes rescheduling really easy because it's automated. And it can automate how applicants are distributed to the recruiters. You can do it round robin to first available. You can send it to a central shared calendar. So again, freeing up time to do the more important things in the human touch. Number 5 is reactivating talent, or the saying waking the dead. That's something a chatbot can manage by sending it out to the age contacts in the database. And by sending them set questions, you can enrich your candidate profiles by getting them to update their info, and you can reactivate those dormant candidates that might be open to opportunity. And last one here, getting your talent answers to the frequently asked questions like, where do I find my benefit info? What's the pay rate? Where's the job? All of that can be handled by an FAQ chatbot. So the next time you hear the word chatbot, you can consider all the use cases listed here and not just maybe the 1 or 2 you've been familiar with. And back to you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. The next session I attended was on healthcare staffing, trends and opportunities for COVID and beyond. The key takeaways from this session was this is the new normal. Demand is decelerating in some ways, but it's still above pre-pandemic. There are more environments looking for staffing, and there's a lot more opportunities that are coming. All healthcare providers and clinicians will start to evaluate what they want from their career instead of complying to what the demand is. Travel had opened the eyes to flexibility and new opportunities. The panel talked about pre-pandemic levels for permanent staff. That demand is now double what it was before, and we will continue to see other seasonal demand across the areas of the hospital. So there is tremendous opportunity there. As for what is forecasted over the next years, there is a spotlight or a highlight on travel nursing, and clinicians now see it as flexibility in their career to be able to experience different areas and have new opportunities to grow. And then hospitals will want contingent staff to fill their needs to ensure patient outcomes, safety, and overall efficiency. The next sweeping trend in hiring is the surge of boomerang workers, and these are the people who quit their jobs and are now or will soon be returning to the workforce. When we talk about the Great Resignation, they mentioned that many people don't actually want to retire. They just wanted to take a break and have some time off. So you may want to consider engaging that workforce with 3 to 6 month contracts throughout the year. They talked about, based on data, there's an increase in telehealth, and it is the largest demand for nurse practitioner. This is a huge area for opportunity and growth. In addition, there are growth trends in niche areas like surgical services, because there's a backlog of surgeries, allied, because people neglected this over the years during COVID. Home health, wellness, and mental health are all areas that will have growth trends as well. They talked about one of the solutions for healthcare staffing Maybe that staffing companies need to think of themselves as developers of talent, and then repurposing talent. Upskilling and reskilling will be critical components as the staffing industry helps to solve the talent shortage in certain areas. Some advice they gave throughout the session for staffing companies to continue to innovate and grow, having digital platforms that are fully integrated from the clinicians to the client is how things will continue to progress. You want to focus on people, process, and technology. So investing in people to get the right people in the right seats with training and development so that you provide the right skill set in order to be successful. You want to scrutinize all of your processes, everything you do, why you do it, how you get access to supply, how you get them to the bedside quicker, and then make those adjustments in order to make those changes for it to be quicker. Utilize technology to be the enabler and letting internal teams be more productive, as well as providing a positive client and candidate experience. Obviously, there's no magic bullet that will solve all of the challenges of healthcare staffing. Success comes from a combination of efforts and approaches. One of the other things they talked about is be an ambassador for clinicians. Get to know them and meet them where they're at with a human touch when they desire it. So create a great candidate experience from the time they're looking for an opportunity to when they're receiving their first paycheck up until they're coming off an assignment. Use technology to match clinicians to jobs and create process for self-service. These clinicians know what they want and they need a quick process to get it all in one platform. As far as technology goes, make sure you embrace it and try not to do too much. They were focused on understanding what you were really good at and your core competency, and then focus on that, nail that before moving on to the next piece of technology. And then they ended it with be nimble, be flexible, but most importantly, build a culture around change. And so now I'll pass it along to David for our key takeaways and lessons.
All right, thanks guys. Lots of good information, and thanks everybody for listening in. Let's wrap it up. We have 3 final slides. What do we learn? So I'll go first. So for me, I said earlier, was this a staffing conference or a tech conference? And you heard a lot of our recap today talking about automation and different technologies to be used throughout the recruiting process. Digital transformation is here. Big companies may have a financial advantage in building new technology, but there are tools, there are platforms, there are software providers that allow even very small companies to be able to embrace more digital transformation in how you engage talent. For everybody listening to today's webinar, you really need a strategic conversation. How are we going to react? What are our competitors going to do? And what are we going to do to give ourselves an advantage in our segment of the market? Second take home, this is a reinforcement. This is the Insight Global, that culture rules. Purpose is motivational to people. We kind of read this in the academic text and in blog posts that people want to work for an organization with purpose. Well, Insight Global proved it, going from 1.9 billion to 3.5 billion in the last 4 years. We need to use our core values as metrics to hire, train, promote, to measure our organization. We need to live our values, because for staffing companies where our service process, company A and company B, it's very much alike. It's those mission, vision, values that really separate one company from the next. And the other piece of advice I like was from SIA about obsessing about technology and people. SIA's success was as much about providing a better work experience for the nurse as it was about their app. So as you think about technology, we're seeing a lot of companies making investments in technology, and they spend all this money and then they go, what do we do with it? Seeing companies spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on, in some cases, we've seen building marketing departments and then saying, why did we hire these people? So everything starts with the objective of better serving your workers or your clients, using the technology to improve that experience. As you automate, don't become a robot. And that's the risk we face as an industry. As every company starts to go through digital transformation, we could all look exactly alike at the end. So you need to make sure that culture comes out in how you apply automation technology to your staffing process. All right, Ryan, what were your takeaways?
Thanks, David. So had a bunch here, but the top three, number one, think like a retailer. Some other people call this the consumerization of staffing. With so much focus on the candidate experience, we've got to target the personality types that fit the roles that we fill, just like retail targets their consumer profiles. And then we've got to give them an awesome experience. Easy applications are an expectation now, just like online ordering is so easy. Second one, don't just celebrate success, study success. As Dan Heath shared in that second keynote, identify and replicate what's already working. That's the key to transformational growth and to solving current challenges. Basically, why would you reinvent the wheel if you already have the answers in-house? So look there first. And then the third one, pick your own lane, own it, stay in it. Doesn't mean don't innovate, but Mark Eldridge, the CEO of Alku, he shared this advice Thursday. They realized that every time they took a .NET rec, they were letting down a PeopleSoft person or a PeopleSoft client needing help, and they wanted that to be their exclusive focus. So they decided to only do PeopleSoft implementations. They became vehement about saying no outside their chosen focus, and they've grown to 400 million in revenue in just 11 years. So that one really stuck with me. And Kathy, how about you?
Okay, great. I'll go very quickly. I learned a lot of lessons, but I narrowed it down to 4. I think you heard me talk about automation a lot in every session I attended. So even though it's still new, it's expanding at a rapid rate. So obviously you want to invest in technology. You don't want to get left behind. Technology, automation, human touch, so many conversations about using technology to provide a better experience, improve communication with candidates, finding ways to drive more value and growth. That's all great, but don't forget to be a human and connect on that personal touch. So like David said, don't become a robot. Emotional fitness is as important as physical fitness. So Natalie Cogan's keynote presentation was a good reminder that we need to take a break and check in with yourself to avoid burnout. Again, here's that human being piece. Don't forget you're a human being and you need a moment to recharge. If you are on empty, you can't give what you don't have. So those are things that set with me. And then on a fun note, I can read a full book on a 4-hour flight. So I attended the Women Leadership and Staffing Speed Sessions on Thursday. They wrote a book, Together We Rise. The authors shared a quick few-minute overview of their stories. All of them were engaging. Some were funny. Some had me excited. Some had me crying. And I desperately needed to know more. So I read the book in 4 hours on my plane ride home. So I definitely recommend this is a must read.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. And that brings us to the end. I want to thank everybody. I know we went over by 15 minutes or so. If there are questions, reach out to us, 888-696-2900, info@haleymarketing.com. We'll be happy to answer. Yes, these slides, since they were filled with data, will be available at lunchwithhaley.com, along with the full recording of today's session. Also, if you're not already subscribing to our monthly publication, Big Ideas, please join in. Go to haleymarketing.com/big-ideas so that you get our latest and greatest thinking, and you get invited to our future events like the one we're having in just a few weeks on April 7th, where we're going to be talking with industry leaders in automation and some of the technology we've discussed today in candidate engagement. We've got people coming in from 3 different companies joining Jeff Stotts, our CMO and automation specialist, to talk about the future of candidate engagement and creating that ultimate candidate experience. And later on in the month, we'll be looking at forensic automation, is how to really dig into your automation program and find the most value. You can grab a seat for these upcoming events at lunchwithhaley.com. All right, for all of us at Haley Marketing Group, thank you so much for being part of today's presentation. Ryan and Kathy, thanks guys. Great stuff that you've put together and shared. Really appreciate your insights. And we'll look forward to seeing you on a future Lunch with Haley event.